Welcome back to the Daily Cardinal Sports Podcast. My name is Otto von Sothen, and I'm joined by Ted Hyngstrom.
What up?
The podcast editor here at the Daily Cardinal. Unfortunately, Matt cannot be with us today. We have Matt behind the camera here, though, our editor. Shout out to him. We're recording this podcast a few hours after the heartbreaking loss of the Wisconsin Badgers to the High Point Panthers in the first round of March Madness. As a reminder, if you guys didn't know, the Wisconsin Badgers were a 5 seed going into this game, and the High Point Panthers were a 12 seed. The Wisconsin Badgers were big favorites, but they managed to lose this game 82-83, a gut-wrenching loss. We're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be looking at the potential offseason ahead for the Wisconsin team. Ted, what are your immediate thoughts after this game? What stood out to you?
Yeah, truly awful performance by the Badgers here. I mean, they put up a fight against High Point University, really. I mean, like this is a team that hadn't won a game against a power...
no quad one game.
No quad one wins entire season. And so, I mean, to fall to a team like that is just awful. It's just awful. But I don't know, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, overall it was pretty much a close game throughout the whole two halves. The two players that obviously stood out as John Blackwell and Nick Boyd both showed up. Blackwell, I think, had 19 points in the first half. He was really balling out. And Nick Boyd, towards the end, was doing Nick Boyd things. He ended up with 27. Alongside them, Austin Rapp had a solid game with 12 points, hitting 2 threes. The big surprise, though, was Nolan Winter. Going into this game, we weren't too sure if he was going to play a lot. He did not start since he's still coming back from an ankle injury. He ended up playing 21 minutes, had 8 points. But I think that was one of the biggest factors in this game, as Wisconsin really struggled on the glass. They got out-rebounded by High Point, which is, I was talking to Ted about this before the game, one of the smallest teams in the nation. I think they're outside the top 200, one of the smallest lineups in the tournament by far, as their biggest players, 6'8", but somehow they still found a way to out-rebound the Wisconsin Badgers and found ways to score in the paint because simply Alexis Bielauskas and Austin Rapp were not protecting the rim well enough. Ted, can you talk to us about a few High Point players that really played well today?
Yeah. First up, let's dive right in with Chase Johnston. My dog did not make a 2-point basket the entire season except for this game, which turned out to be the winning 2-point basket at the end there. And he was also 4 for 6 from 3. He's deadly from beyond the arc.
He was hitting crazy threes. He hit like a 3 from the logo. 4 seconds into the shot clock.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. After that, I was starting to get scared. I was like, okay, this is the type of game. Yeah, you're watching the clip right now.
No,
this is the type of game that the Badgers lose. Who else, Ted, played really well for the Panthers?
Yeah, we got Rob Martin, shot 23 field goals, went 9 for 23, had 23 points. A lot of 23s there. 4 for 10 from beyond the arc. 1 for 2 from the line. High Point really only had 9 free throws on the day. So they scored a ton of their points just on the court. Probably good that the Badgers weren't fouling, but even then, they couldn't stop them on defense. Yeah,
they killed us from 3. And like you said, Ted, Rob Martin balled out. He's listed at 5'10" on ESPN, but he looked a little shorter.
5'10".
Yeah, he looked a little shorter in game, but the Badgers were not finding any solution to guard him. We had Nick Boyd on him at some times. It didn't work. We'd put a bigger player on him. He'd always find a way to score. So that was truly gut-wrenching for us.
Yeah.
Not too many points from Braden Carrington today, only 5. He only played 15 minutes. And Andrew Rohde had 2 threes, solid game.
Yeah.
But now let's look at the bigger picture, because I think that's what upsets many Badger fans, me included. I don't know about you, Ted, but now it's the second time in 3 years that the Badgers lose in the first round as a 5 seed. So the 5 versus 12 seed is often a game where there's a lot of upsets, I think. So a few people were expecting High Point to win this game, but I mean, the Badgers were favored, and they should win this game. And I think in 2019, the Badgers also lost as a 5 seed to Oregon, and a few years later, they lost as a 6 seed to 11 seed Iowa State. So you see, there's a common trend here where the Badgers play a good regular season, They come in the tournament as a decent high seed, but they don't make it out of the first round, which is truly upsetting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things that we could look at here is the amount of people that had playing time today. The Badgers only played 7 players.
Yeah.
And part of that can be attributed to injury. Like, obviously, we lost, what's his name?
Janicki?
Sophomore. Janicki, yeah. But even then, he wasn't playing, like, crazy minutes, right? Like, this is not a deep team. And when you look, I remember last year when we played teams like Michigan State or Michigan who would have these crazy deep rosters. And like, I almost think, you wrote here in your notes, Otto, like, is this on Great Guard? Like, I honestly think it could go back all the way to recruitment and like finding people to fill out the bench to be able to have a team that can like replace the effect, for instance, of Nolan Winter of not being able to play a whole lot. I mean, he's a big guy and he got a lot of rebounds throughout the season.
Yeah.
And so honestly, that kind of plays into why they lost today, like you talked about a little bit earlier. But
I agree with that. I agree. That's well said. One thing that really sucks for me this game is Nick Boyd. I feel bad for him because he truly had one of the best seasons from a Wisconsin Badger in recent memory. First player to average 20 points or more since Michael Finley. So that was in the 90s for you guys that don't know. I think he's the
like
Badger.
Years.
Yeah, the Badger who has had the most 20-point games in history. And like we said, today he had 27 points. He balled out. Unfortunately, the last 2 possessions, he was in control of the ball, didn't find a way to score. But I don't have this loss on Nick Boyd, honestly. He showed up in the big games throughout all year, and he showed up tonight. So that's truly unfortunate for him and for the rest of this team. Yeah, I think the discussion throughout this whole season, which was pretty interesting, is that the Wisconsin Badgers could beat anyone. I mean, we saw them go into Ann Arbor, beat Michigan. We saw them beat Illinois twice. We saw them beat Michigan State at home. All these teams are really good teams that are either doing great in March Madness as of right now or will do great things. But the discussion was also they can lose to anyone, and that was the case tonight. The one interesting thing, was the Badgers can beat anyone where they're shooting well from 3, but they can lose to anyone where they're not shooting well from 3.
Yeah.
The Badgers today shot well from 3, but they only shot 9. What do you see from that point, Ted?
Yeah, I think it goes back to like what the strategy is on the court. You know, like obviously, like you said, shooting threes can be good if they win, but and they're able to make them. But if they miss a bunch of them, then they fall behind. I mean, if they'd made one more 3, they would have won. So I think like I don't know. I think honestly a change in strategy could be on the horizon. Last couple seasons, we've definitely seen them really go for the 3 and really embody the 3, live by the 3 is what my high school basketball coach used to say. But I almost think they could look into finding maybe another big, someone who could shoot the 2 really well, like a master of the mid-range, DeMar DeRozan type situation.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's kind of my It's kind of my thoughts. So.
Yeah, maybe the scouting report that we got is the High Point Panthers aren't really tall. Their tallest player is 6'8", so take advantage in the paint.
Yeah.
Badgers scored a lot in the paint. They couldn't score that much from outside tonight. I think that's all we have on the game review part. We're going to dive into a few questions now. Ted has a few ready for us on the outlook of this game, but also on the rest of the seasons and the possible seasons ahead of us.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think...
These ones.
Oh, okay, got you. Otto.
Yeah.
In your opinion, is this loss on Greg Gard? And if not, who's responsible for this?
I mean, the first person you look at for this loss is definitely Greg Gard. He hasn't made the Sweet 16. He hasn't made it past the first weekend of March Madness since 2017, the first season he took over from Bo Ryan. Ever since that, it was either first round exit or second round exits. We talked about BYU last year or JMU in the first round 2 years ago. So that's definitely something you look at. I think we have people on both sides of the spectrum on social media or just any media in general talking about either, no, it would be crazy to fire Greg Gard. He's doing great in the regular season. Or other people who have to fire, were calling for Greg Gard's name and asking to fire him. I think you have to look at it from 2 angles. You can, on one hand, yes, Greg Gard is great in the regular season. Wisconsin is often at the top of the Big Ten, and they manage to elevate their floor. However, their ceiling is always limited because they can never perform in March Madness, and I think that's an important thing to look at on Greg Gard's resume. You can admit both, and I think there's probably a psychological blockage in his head at some point, because he's been here for 10 years now and he knows he can't get past the first round. Many times it's close games like these last 2 years. So I think there's definitely something on his end that we have to hold him accountable. However, I don't think it's not at all realistic to fire Greg Gard today. I mean, the football program is really facing some tough days, so financially it wouldn't make sense to go away from a consistent coach that gets you to the tournament, that gets you big upsets, gets you far in the Big Ten tournament also, but can't really ever get it done in March Madness. It's really frustrating, especially in college basketball, where so much weighs on March Madness, even though you play close to 30 games in the regular season.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Ted, on Greg Gard in general and the basketball program?
Yeah, I remember when I started on this podcast, my whole thing was like, oh, yeah, fire Gard. And, you know, I have to agree with you. I think, like, now is not the time to fire Greg Gard. Maybe last year at the beginning of the season, but definitely not now. I mean, I think, like, as you said, getting to the tournament is always nice. Certainly better than someone like Utah, where I'm from, where they would just never do anything. And so I think that, and like the basketball program is a bright spot right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's fun to watch Nick Boyd. It is fun to watch John Blackwell go out and play and break records. I mean, like you said, he's the most 20-point games in Badger history. So I don't know. I'm of the opinion that they should keep moving forward. Maybe next season they could consider it. I mean, even then, I don't, unless they like failed to make the tournament or something. But yeah, I highly doubt. I mean, they've had 2 pretty good recruiting seasons in the past 2 sessions, wouldn't you say? So I don't know.
Yeah, he managed to find good players in the transfer portal. He recruited John Blackwell and Nolan Winter out of high school, so he's good at developing players. I mean, he's had great players, Johnny Davis, John Tonje, Nick Boyd. But no matter how great the players, he can never really get over that hump in March Madness, and that's why this discussion needs to happen. And he's probably in the next few weeks going to be asked about that, so I'm curious to know what's his stance on things.
And going into John Blackwell and Nolan Winter.
Yeah.
Do you have any news on them? Do you have any news on what they're going to do? Because they're both juniors, correct?
Yeah.
Are they moving on to the NBA, or like what's the deal with them?
Well, those are going to be questions asked to them in the next few weeks. Of course, now that the season's over, both of these players have a choice either to test NBA draft waters like John Blackwell did last season, stay at Wisconsin, or maybe even enter the transfer portal. We were going to talk about the offseason a little later in the podcast, but let's do it now. I think the biggest priority for Wisconsin now is to retain John Blackwell and retain Nolan Winter. I mean, both of these guys are all Big Ten level players. Unfortunately, Nolan Winter was hurt today, couldn't play his best, but John Blackwell clearly showed that he's one of the best players in the country when he's at his best. So for sure, retaining these 2 players is going to be huge. Last year, I know they signed a contract a little earlier in the year. I don't know if a contract has been signed this year. And John Blackwell was asked a few times about his future, but that's definitely news that we're going to have to look out for. There's no immediate answer as of right now. They're probably going to look at their options before making that decision, both of these players. But yeah, it's going to be huge retaining them. I know Austin Rapp, for example, after the game in an interview, he said he intends to stay at Wisconsin next season. We saw him improve throughout the year. Hopefully he can take a next step next season as a junior. I definitely want to join what Ted said earlier. I think another offseason priority for Wisconsin should be getting a big man that can score in the paint. I mean, obviously, the last 2 years, we saw that this was a big need for Wisconsin, a defensive anchor, a guy that can rim run, an athletic player that can both protect the rim but also be dangerous in the paint. And that's not really what Wisconsin have had the last few seasons. And I know we rely heavily on the 3. We want players that can shoot the 3, but at some point you got to look at, hey, there's a reason why we're not working in March. Maybe let's try to look for a big man. It's hard to get them in the portal, but that can do these things for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, regardless of anything, I almost think this team, if they were to fire the coach, like everyone's gone. But outside of that, like, I think they keep. I mean, of these 7 right here, like who do they keep? You know,
A lot of the team is still young,
True.
especially some of the rotational players. Obviously, Austin Rapp was in the starting lineup. He announced he'll be back next year. We talked about John Blackwell.
Yeah.
We talked about Nolan Winter. Janicki was in a big rotational player before going down with a hand injury.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can come back next year. And we have a few freshmen that played pretty well this season.
Yeah.
Obviously, Alexis Bielauskis. Hopefully he steps up next year. And we also have guys like Hayden Jones, Zach Kinziger, Will Garlock.
Will Garlock, yeah.
We'll see if they're back next year, and they'll probably be asked to play a little bit more and fill out some needs in the rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I have one last questions for both of us, Ted. Is this loss a bigger disappointment than the JMU loss 2 years ago? So 2 years ago, Wisconsin lost as a 5 seed to JMU. It was a little bit a bigger loss from Wisconsin. It wasn't as close as this one to High Point. Do you want to go first on this one, or do you want me to go first?
I'll let you take the lead.
I think this one is a bigger loss because Wisconsin going into the JMU loss 2 years ago, both Ted and I weren't students here yet, but they were trending downwards. They had started the season really well, but towards the end of the season they were losing a lot of games, so that was a little bit more expected. It was the complete opposite this season because late in the year they picked up big wins at Purdue.
Yeah.
They beat Illinois in the Big Ten tournament. They went down to the wire against Michigan, the number 1 team in the country. If Yaxel Lendeberg doesn't hit that crazy 3 with 1 millisecond left on the shot clock, maybe Wisconsin's in the Big Ten tournament. So I had for sure way bigger expectations this year. I even thought that this year we were going to make a bigger run than last year simply because of our resume and how we show that we could go toe-to-toe with big teams, and we had such a great guard play with Nick Boyd and John Blackwell. So I'm for sure more disappointed this year, but you hate to lose games in March as a 5 seed.
Yeah.
Anyways, regardless. What about you, Ted?
Yeah, I agree. I think like this year, there was a lot of high hopes. You know, like they could have gone far. I honestly think they could have gone far. This is even though there were only 7 like contributors, I guess if you want to say in this box score, like these are 7 decent contributors. You know,
For sure.
And so I think they had the opportunity really to take this. I don't know, maybe not. Obviously not. I don't know, championship's a little far, but at least the Sweet 16 and at least to the Elite 8. You know, they had some big wins this season. They showed that they could play against the top teams in the country.
Yeah.
And so obviously it sucks to lose to this number 12 High Point, and maybe High Point's like a Cinderella. That'd be awesome if they made it to like the Final Four.
It'll make that loss look better for
Greg
sure.
Gard is praying they make it to the Final Four, but
I agree with Ted. I mean, throughout this whole lineup, there's players that shined at any point in the season. Brendan Carrington off the bench only played 15 minutes tonight. He set the record for Wisconsin for most 3 scored in the game.
Oh yeah.
Austin Rapp, less than a week ago, he scored 6 straight threes against Michigan to string up a comeback. I mean, all these players balled out at some point in the season.
Yeah.
So it's really tragic for it to end that way. One last thing I want to say before we end this podcast is that the last 2 years, Wisconsin lost in March Madness not because of their offense, because they scored 82 points or more, both in the loss against High Point and the loss to BYU. They shot well. They played well in both of those games. However, they conceded too many points, man. It's the defense that was the problem in both of those years. And I think that's also one thing I want to see going into the offseason. We saw this offense be revolutionized with Kirk Penny as an assistant the last 3 years, relying way more on the 3. And we're now one of the best offenses in the country in KenPom. We've been top 10 in the last 3 years. However, we're outside of the top 50 in the last 3 years too. So I hope we can maybe get some guy on the on the staff, maybe a defensive coordinator to elevate this defense, because that has to be a priority at some point. You can't only rely on offense because it shows that it's not viable, especially come the tournament.
Yeah.
Is there any last things you want to add, Ted?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the vein that we should end off on. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you to the University of Wisconsin Marching Band for the express written consent to allow us to use their productions of You've Said It All, Varsity If You Want to Be a Badger, Hot Town in Old Town Tonight, and On Wisconsin. This podcast is edited by Matthew Titus. Thank you again. He's doing a great work behind the camera and behind the scenes. Nothing would be possible without him. My name is Otto. I was joined by Ted today. We'll see you guys maybe next week. We're nearing the end of this podcast season. This has been the Thursday edition. Oh no, Friday, my bad. Of the Daily Cardinal Sports Podcast.